Hey everybody, and welcome back to another compilation style video. Today, I wanted to look at some of the most unique moments of the entire 2025 season, being the ones I don't believe we will ever see again on a major league field, because of just how purely unbelievable they were. Now, as I always say in these intros, since this was previously released content, some of the things I say throughout may sound a little out of context, but I do believe the plays themselves exist in a relative vacuum. Make sure to comment below as well which one you think was the most bizarre. A triple play. To some degree, there's nothing more exciting or impactful that can happen on a big league field, as obviously that is literally the peak of outs that can occur in the span of one batted ball event. Despite their rarity, they truly do come in all shapes and sizes, with some of them being a bit more routine than others. But what about when one occurs as the result of a bad call from an umpire? This then would also have to be one of the more impactful calls that an umpire could possibly blow, right? Well, that's exactly what we just saw happen in a game between the Mets and Nationals. But the even crazier, and perhaps singular, thing about this play is that it's not the first time we've seen one of this kind involving the same cast of characters on an identical play. You'll see what I mean. Facing Jesse Winker, Jake Irvin fired a fastball on the inner half of the plate, which got absolutely demolished to first base, where Nathaniel Lowe apparently caught it in the air, flipping to second to get the runner who had initially started at second, before receiving a throw back to first to force out the runner who was now standing on second. Even though people were a bit confused at first, on paper it really was that simple. This resulted in the first 3-6-3 triple play since 1989, which I actually got from Codify on Twitter, who cited the account Saber. But here's the thing. It really shouldn't have happened, because when you go back and look at the replay, the ball actually went off the ground first into the mitt of Lowe, which meant that both base runners moving up should have been considered safe. And Winker, who actually made it to first before the throw got there, should also have been safe, meaning that 0 outs should have been recorded on this play. What a wild swing from that to the inning ending. Why wasn't this rectified? Well, unfortunately for the Mets, there's actually no procedure allowed to challenge a trap call in the infield, meaning that the play would have to stand. This was very impactful to the overall game as well, as the Nats would actually eventually go on to win on a walk-off after entering the 9th inning being down by a single run. Who knows how many Mets could have possibly scored with the bases loaded and nobody out in that 4th inning had they not been basically railroaded out of the frame. The other thing that I alluded to before that I just had to point out, being that it's endlessly fascinating to me, is that this actually isn't the first time that Jesse Winker has lined into a triple play fielded by Nathaniel Lowe, as back in 2022, he did just that while with the Mariners, on a play that was almost identical to this one, with Lowe catching the ball just off the dirt, confusing the base runners before this time stepping on first base beforehand, then flipping to second. Unfortunately, there wasn't any good replays I could find to see if that ball actually hit the dirt in the same way as with the Mets game, but it looks like it might have happened here as well, which to me makes this set of plays one of the more bizarre I've ever seen, or even possibly could have seen, considering that hitting into a triple play almost never happens, but hitting into a triple play to the same player on essentially the same play seems downright impossible. But I guess that's the beauty of baseball. Literally anything can happen at any time, and then can happen again in basically the same way. Ronald Acuna Jr. came back yesterday in one of the more electric returns we've seen in recent memory, crushing a 467-foot moonshot on the first pitch in his first AB, before adding a 108-mile-per-hour single later and one of the best throws of the season from the right field corner to nab Elias Diaz trying for second. But unfortunately for him, pretty much no one else offensively showed up, resulting in the game being tied 1-1 going into the 9th, when Manny Machado crushed this go-ahead homer to put the Padres up 2-1. But all of this was simply an appetizer for what would happen in the bottom of that inning, when Eli White managed to make a mind-numbingly dumb base running play that I don't believe I've ever seen anything quite like before. But first, let's examine how he got there. Alex Verdugo would lead off versus Robert Suarez, grounding a 3-1 fastball just past the sliding glove of Xander Bogaerts, giving the Braves a leadoff base runner. Our titular character Eli would then enter the game as a pinch runner. Sean Murphy would follow this with what amounted to essentially a swinging bunt down the third base line that had some crazy English on it, spinning fair at the last second before being fielded by Elias Diaz, who made a ridiculously good spinning play to nab the Braves' backstop by an inch. Still, a runner was now on second with 1 out, with Ozzie Albies coming to the dish, and the now veteran second baseman would not disappoint, lining a changeup in his center field, which Merrill got to fairly quickly. Runners on first and third and 1 out, right? Wrong. For some inconceivable reason, White seemed to believe that the ball was caught, which had him racing back towards second, resulting in him getting easily tagged out. Just look at this. I can't remember a time I've ever seen on a major league, minor league, or even little league field a runner believe that the ball was caught when it actually had landed, get all the way to third base, and then run back to second before getting tagged out on what wasn't even a force play. Now, the first question that pops to my mind was, what the hell was third base coach Matt Tuiasosopo doing? But as we can see from this angle, he was behaving completely normally, giving the hold-up sign as White approached third base. However, it seems that Eli misinterpreted the universal two hands up sign for a hold, as Matt somehow saying the ball was caught and that he had to get back. Just look at Tuiasosopo's body language here. He had no idea what was going on. And as you might expect, this ended up being a game-losing blunder after Michael Harris II grounded out to short, sealing one of the most bizarre losses we've seen yet this year, on one of the most uniquely stupid plays I've ever seen on an MLB field. Good for the Padres, they broke their losing streak, but I have to say it does suck to me that the heroic efforts of the returning Acuna ended up being completely wasted. In the baseball space, we see a lot of videos that are, in some ways, sensationalist, especially in their titling. I'll be the first one to admit it's always a balancing act for me between trying to properly represent what I'm going to be talking about and coming up with an interesting enough title to appeal to general baseball fans. But in today's video, I'm going to make a claim that seems like it might be a stretch, but is, in my opinion, nearly indisputable. The rookie first baseman for the Oakland A's, yes, I'm going to keep calling them that, just had the best offensive game in Major League history. Now, I'll back this up with more facts at the end when I'm recapping his entire performance, but first, let's go through what his day actually looked like, with things beginning pretty inauspiciously in the first inning when he lined a fastball to left field for a single with one out. This would be his last hit of the day that didn't go for extra bases, as in the second inning, with his team up now 3-0, he would launch a curveball towards the Crawford boxes, clearing them easily and giving him his 20th home run of the year through just his first 66 career games. He wouldn't have to wait long to come up again, this time in the fourth inning, when he launched another fastball to deep left center field, seeing it clang high off the wall out there for an RBI double. Keep this hit in mind for later for how little it missed being a home run by. It'll be important. In the sixth, Nick would come up yet again and basically repeat exactly what he had done on his first home run, launching a no-doubter out to left field that almost landed in the exact same spot. It might seem hard to believe, but we're only a little past the halfway point for his production in this one, as in the eighth, he would get yet another fastball and again demolish it, this one being his only pulled blast of the night. And of course, it went into the second deck, a 414-foot laser that left his bat at 114 miles an hour. At this point, it already would have been one of the best games we've ever seen from a rookie. But he would have one final at-bat in the ninth inning, this time versus a position player in Cooper Hummel, with him delivering a 78-mile-per-hour nothing ball to the hulking Kurtz, seeing him lace his third home run of the day to nearly the exact same spot as his first two, again to left field in the Crawford boxes. His final numbers for the contest: 4 home runs, 8 RBI, 6 runs scored, 6 hits, 19 total bases, and 5 extra base hits. All of these were either rookie records or tied rookie records besides the RBI. But I didn't say this was just the best game ever for a first-year player. I said it was for anybody. And I think this is backed up by the fact that it also saw him tie the single-game record for home runs, runs scored, total bases, and extra base hits. If it wasn't obvious, no one else has ever managed to tie that amount of single major league records in one contest in those categories, besides one guy, being Shawn Green, who had basically the same line except for one thing: one less RBI. And honestly, if we were looking for a tiebreaker, that's as good as any. Also, remember how I said that double early on in the contest would be important? Yeah, if that ball had managed to be a couple feet higher, he would have had MLB's first ever 5 home run game. But even as things stand with how they worked out, it still was the best offensive contest we have ever seen on a Major League Baseball field by an individual player. Yesterday's home run derby featured some really interesting moments, including O'Neal Cruz hitting a 513-foot, 118-mile-per-hour moonshot, the farthest non-course homer since Aaron Judge in 2017. Cal Raleigh advancing to the next round of the Derby by literal inches over Brent Rooker, and Jazz Chisholm having one of the worst home run Derby performances of all time, which I'm actually going to make a video about a little bit later as well in depth. But for now, I want to talk about perhaps the most unique moment in recent home run Derby history, when somebody actually robbed a home run from one of the contestants, in the finals no less. Junior Caminero was at the plate, having hit 4 home runs to that point when he crushed a line drive to straightaway left. One of the kids out there ranged back before leaping at the last second, robbing Caminero of what would have been a sure home run. It was funny to see the players' reactions immediately after as well, gesturing out to the outfield to make sure that it actually counted. But the umpires agreed that it did, putting this kid in some hot water, which you could definitely tell he understood based on the expression on his face. Fellow finals member Raleigh was at least appreciative. That was the fulfillment of a question that had been debated between me and my brother personally for a long time. Do they count the homer if somebody takes it away? And I guess the obvious answer to that is yes, they did here. And for a second, it looked like it might be consequential, as Caminero got on a bit of a hot streak towards the end of the competition, entering the bonus round with 14 home runs, having a real chance to knock Kyle out if he could manage to crush just 5 more. But unfortunately for him and Rays fans everywhere, there would be only a single additional dinger he would hit, though it certainly was a prodigious one at 463 feet. After the final line drive settled into the outfield, it was official. Cal Raleigh was the 2025 Home Run Derby champ, marking the first time that either a catcher or switch hitter has ever won the competition. A truly impressive accomplishment in a season that has been full of them for big dumpers so far. Cross-ups are an unfortunate thing that used to be a relatively common problem in Major League Baseball. Every couple games, there would be a misunderstanding that would involve the pitcher and catcher not being on the same page with a certain pitch type being delivered. But this has largely gone the way of the dinosaur after the introduction of PitchCom, as these two parties now communicate directly, making it hard to cross up anyone. But we not only just saw one of these nearly extinct instances, but it seems it may have been done intentionally as a means of a hurler getting revenge on his game caller. Framber Valdez was on the mound in a 2-0 game, with the bases loaded and 1 out, and on a 2-2 to Giancarlo Stanton, he would punch out the righty on a racing changeup or sinker, I'm not exactly sure which, putting him 1 out away from getting out of trouble entirely. But it was then on a 1-0 to a player that's been clutch all year, Trent Grisham, that Valdez grooved a fastball right down the middle, seeing it crushed out to left field into the Crawford boxes, extending New York's lead to a much safer 6-0. That was Grisham's 3rd grand slam of the year so far, by the way. Now, on the surface, this seems like a pretty routine sequence, right? A pitcher just missed with his spot. But if you go back to the Houston broadcast, you can see his catcher, Cesar Salazar, telling him to step off before he even delivered the offering. Yet the lefty just went ahead and did so, and paid the ultimate price. This is obviously a stubborn move on his part, but if this is where things ended, nobody would be talking about it. But, you see, just 1 pitch later, we would see Salazar get handcuffed by a 93-mile-per-hour sinker right down the middle of the plate, with the catcher's immediate reaction being a stare out to the mound, which prompted Valdez to turn with an exasperated look on his face and walk behind the mound. Look at Caesar's reaction as he goes to deliver a new ball to the hurler. It certainly seems to me like he was peeved. And it's not like Framber was apologetic either, never even approaching his catcher to check if he was okay. And in case you might think this is a little soft of a request, consider what former professional catcher and current quality content maker Eric Sim had to say, being, quote, "If he did this on purpose after the catcher told him to step off, but instead refusing, then giving up a grand slam, F him. Especially when off-speed is called and throwing a sinker. I had a torn ligament on my thumb from one of those and was out for a year. Especially when you have the kind of movement Framber does, you absolutely cannot be doing things like this in any circumstance. Period. True psycho behavior." And of course, he would claim after the game that it wasn't intentional because, what was he supposed to say? I had an outburst and hit my catcher with a pitch intentionally? Of course not, but just based on his body language and pretty much every pundit's response to this, including former Major League player Dallas Braden, who believed it was 100% intentional, I think it's pretty safe to say it was so. This is going to go down as one of the all-time scummy teammate moves we have on video. And yeah, it's hard not to see it affecting his incoming free agency in one way or another. The Yankees would go on to close this one out by a final score of 7-1, saddling Valdez with a well-deserved loss as New York proceeded to overtake the Astros in record. Which means with the hard-charging Red Sox right behind them, if Houston doesn't manage to secure their tentative lead on their division, they could very well end up not making the playoffs at all. We've seen a number of incredible catches this year, including Dalton Varsho falling down and yet still managing to somehow make the play, Denzel Clark pulling off one of the craziest Spider-Man robberies you'll ever see, and the Red Sox turning a potential home run into an alley-oop snag. But I don't think any of these would be in the conversation for the best catch of all time. But we just saw something today that might very well fit into that category, and then the outfielder who made it ended up doing something crazy later as well. Jacob Young was patrolling center versus the Mets in the bottom of the 5th when Brett Beatty sent a fly ball to deep center field, 408 feet from home plate, before leaping into the wall. But as he did so, the ball that had come to rest in his mitt became dislodged, and yet he somehow, as it fell, had the presence of mind to kick it back up in the air before catching it for a second time. I want you to see the reactions of 4 different parties when he did so. Himself, his pitcher, Jake Irvin, who might have had one of the most effusive responses to a play you'll ever see, Beatty, who himself was left staring wide-eyed at the whole thing, and then this poor Mets fan, who looked like he was about to end it all. I think all of these do a good job of capturing how ridiculous this play truly was, as the first part of it was already insane, but then to consciously kick it to yourself as it's falling to the ground is just another level of quick thinking and body control, and it led to what I believe might be one of the greatest catches in Major League Baseball history, if not the absolute best. Think about it. When have you ever seen anything remotely similar, especially taking place 400 feet plus from home plate? But as I alluded to in the intro, he wasn't done yet. going on to rob Francisco Alvarez of a game-tying dinger to lead off the bottom of the ninth, essentially almost beating the Mets by himself in what ended up being a one-run loss, and in a spot that New York just couldn't afford to take one, as the Reds managed to sweep the Cubs over in Cincinnati, helping them to leapfrog the Mets in the playoff picture. When you have a major league player who's probably seen about as much baseball as nearly anyone, and on the most intimate level no less, saying, "What the F just happened?" immediately after a play, you know it was something unique. And in the case of yesterday's NLCS Game 1 between the Brewers and Dodgers, this was certainly the case, as Max Muncy had what should have been, by all rights, a grand slam, turned into a, get this, grounded into double play to the center fielder, 402 feet from home plate. But we'll get there. The game itself didn't start off all that notably, with each team being held scoreless through 3, with just one hit between them, a single off the bat of Caleb Durbin. He was then promptly picked off. This takes us to the 4th, when Teoscar Hernandez walked to lead off. Isaac Collins then made the first clutch play of the frame, a leaping catch into the wall in left field that robbed Freddie Freeman of what looked like a sure double. This meant that when Will Smith and Tommy Edman notched back-to-back singles, no runs had yet come in to score. Still, with Max Muncy striding to the plate, it seemed like the Dodgers had a good chance to get at least one in, and on the 1-0, it looked like he was going to do a lot more than that, crushing a cutter 104 miles an hour to straightaway center field, sending Sal Frelick back to the wall before leaping, getting his glove over the fence to rob Max of a home run. But in the process of crashing into it, the ball came out and tipped off the yellow line, meaning this was a live play. The base runners could advance, yet, for some inexplicable reason, despite LA's third base coach Dino Ebel telling Teo to get going, the veteran sputtered, allowing him to get thrown out at home on a force out. But we weren't done. William Contreras, ever the intelligent player, then immediately jogged over to third base himself, because Will Smith, the runner on second, seemed to not pick up the field umpire signaling that this wasn't a catch, allowing him to then be forced out of the bag. This created what will probably go down as one of the more iconic savant results of all time. Max Muncy grounds into a double play, center fielder Sal Frelick to shortstop Joey Ortiz to catcher William Contreras. This is certainly one of the best plays I've ever seen live overall. For Sal to get up, rob the grand slam, then catch the ball that popped out of his mitt, make a perfect relay throw to Ortiz, who then made a perfect relay throw himself to home plate, before seeing Contreras immediately realize the implications of all of this, and then complete a heads-up play, makes this, in my opinion, truly singular. Unfortunately for Milwaukee, this wasn't enough to wake up their bats. Dodgers starter Blake Snell would end up going 8 innings while only allowing that one hit, facing the minimum 24 batters in this time frame, making him, according to Sarah Langs on Twitter, the first pitcher to do this since Don Larson in 1956, almost 70 years ago. In this time, LA scored 2 of their own, one being on a home run from the always clutch Freddie Freeman, and the other on a walk with the bases loaded from Mookie Betts. The Brew Crew would put up one final fight in the bottom of the 9th, scoring on a sacrifice fly from Jackson Chourio before chasing Roki Sasaki from the game, on a clutch walk taken by Christian Yelich, forcing Dave Roberts to go with Blake Trinan, a pitcher who's certainly had his own blow-ups this year. But he would manage to bear down here to strike out Bryce Terang on a fastball at his eyes to end things, getting the Dodgers out to a 1-0 lead in the National League Championship Series. I mean, what do I even say? How do I even give an intro for what the hell just happened last night in the Dodgers' clinching win versus the Brewers? Shohei Ohtani had arguably, and I don't even think it's necessarily all that arguable, the best game in baseball history by any player. You heard me right. The best game by any player. It was so good, in fact, I can't even list all the records it broke in this video because there's so many I could just spend the whole thing reciting them. Instead, I'd rather just get into it and try to document the mind-numbing greatness front to back. It was not a slow start either. The dude literally came out in the top of the first and struck out the side after a leadoff walk, throwing 2 triple-digit heaters and a ridiculous sweeper before hopping into the batter's box and immediately launching, and I do mean launching, a home run to right field. A blast that went 446 feet and left his bat at 116.5 miles per hour. This already would have been a great day for most players, and it was just the first inning. LA would later add on when Tommy Edman singled into center field and Teoscar Hernandez grounded out to first base, getting Milwaukee down in a 3-0 hole in a game they absolutely had to have. And Ohtani would make sure it would stand up by retiring the Brew Crew in order in the second, and then after a leadoff walk to Blake Perkins in the third, struck out Joey Ortiz and managed to get Bryce Terang to line out to left field, which somehow also featured Kike Hernandez being able to throw behind the runner Perkins to nab him on one of the stranger looking double plays you'll ever see. A scoreless fourth that featured Shohei stranding a leadoff double with back-to-back strikeouts was followed by his third plate appearance of the night, sandwiched around a walk, this time versus righty Chad Patrick, and on a 3-1. The all-time great proceeded to crush a cutter low and inside off the plate a bit, 469 feet to right field, literally almost out of the entire stadium at 116.9 miles per hour. Per Sarah Lang, this was already the first game in MLB history where a player had hit two 116-mile-per-hour home runs in the same contest, and we were only about halfway through it. 2 more strikeouts in the 5th were followed by 2 more strikeouts in the 6th, helping him to seal 6 scoreless frames with just 2 hits allowed and 10 strikeouts. He would depart in the top of the 7th after walking Christian Yelich and giving up a single to William Contreras, but none of those runs would come back on him after Alex Vesia managed to perform a high wire act perfectly, getting a pop-up and ground ball double play to get out of it. And it was in the bottom of that frame things would go from downright ridiculous to absolutely, positively ludicrous when he launched his 3rd home run of the day, 427 feet to center field at 113.6 miles per hour. You could probably guess this, but this is the first time we've ever seen a player have 3 home runs with an exit velocity of at least 110 miles per hour, traveling at least 400 feet. Remember, his shortest was 427. Milwaukee managed to scratch one across in the 8th on a double play ball that Bryce Terang beat out, but this was the sum of their offense, which honestly was almost as historically bad as the Dodgers' pitching was good in this series. 3 outs later in the 9th, and Andy Pages was catching the final out in right field, securing LA's 2nd straight ticket to the World Series, with all of the momentum in the world going into it, coming off of what probably was the best individual performance by a major league player we've ever seen. Period.
Alright everybody, if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and if you did, consider checking out any of these other videos on your screen right now for other content just like this. Also, if you ever see anything you'd like to see me detail in the video, feel free to reach out to my email, basebpoet@gmail.com, and if I end up using your idea, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.